Um, my name is Jim McLaughlin, and I welcome you to this workshop on letter carving. I've been doing woodworking as a hobby for a long time. I retired from my regular job in '03 and built a workshop in '05. Nothing like this, but it's... I don't have any formal training in woodworking. I've never taken any classes. Everything that is by reading or watching YouTubes, or there wasn't very much like in that area when I first retired. But anyway, I've primarily used hand tools in my work. I do use a rotary Fordham for some applications to take out the background or whatever. As far as letter carving, let's see. There are basically two types, as you probably know. There's an incised carving where you take the blank wood surface and carve the letters into it. And then there's the raised lettering. An example is this one behind me, so that you basically carve out the background and leave the letters standing proud. There are a lot of YouTube how to do these things if you're interested, and it's curious that people like Chris Pye, who's the author of a number of books and has taught carving. I guess he's a Brit. His procedure uses a lot of chisels, carving straight down into as far incised lettering. And then there are other people on YouTube. You find there's one guy that uses a pocket knife. Another person uses a utility knife with a pretty heavy duty blade, but nonetheless, that's what he's using. So I guess my point is, in terms of incised lettering, there's a lot of ways to go. Whatever suits you get into it and you'll find something that works for you. But whether it's raised lettering or incised, the process of putting pattern, the letters onto the surface of the wood is pretty much the same. I found that you can get almost any font on your computer, and that's what I do. I find out what I want and then print them out at whatever size. Like this is probably 150 times or whatever if 12 point is typical for text, this is like 30 times maybe this big. So I print out, what I do is print out the letters and put them together in what looks like a reasonable, acceptable pattern. And I use that to actually transfer the image to the wood. I've used graph paper. I've used carbon paper. This is graphite paper. If you get that really works well. Another school of thought takes the pattern and they use rubber cement or something on the back of the thing, and they actually glue it onto the surface of the wood, and they use that to carve into it. I never tried that. I don't see much value in it, but people do it. I have here a handout if you want to pass that around. This is sort of a tutorial on the putting letters together, stringing them together, the distance between the two, how they conform to a particular line that you put onto the wood. Like, for example, rounded letters typically expand a little bit above and below the upper and lower limits of the text. And these are just lessons that people learn, and sort of visually it it works better. So personally, I had used raised lettering, which is what you see here, for most of the signs I made early in the last 20 or so years. And I'm not sure why. I thought the Incised was a little bit easier, and I guess I was snobby. I said, well, I'll go for the harder one. But recently, I've done a number of signs involving incised lettering, and it really is. I think it really holds up well. The other point I would make is that incised lettering is quicker. It's a quicker process than carving out all the background and just leaving the letters raised. So, and then, as I said, the fonts that are available on computer, like on Word, I mean, there are a dozen, hundreds of different fonts, and you know, whatever suits your fancy. The Times Roman is probably the one that is, I would say, enjoys the most popularity. It's got serifs, and that's what this is, by the way. The process of putting the image of what you're doing, what the letters are, the numbers, it's the same for either type of carving. Basically, as I said, you get your size of the text and done, and the font, and you print those out in paper, and then you transfer it to the wood, the project, with the carbon paper or the graphite paper. So that's what I have. This is going to be a number, the date that a house in Hopkinton was built, and the woman wanted somebody to do it, and I stepped forward, and so I started doing this, and I'll continue during the demonstration here. Yes.
Regarding graphite paper versus carbon paper, I've heard some people say not to use carbon paper because the black stays on the wood. Do you have any pros and cons of graphite over carbon?
I think maybe it's the age of the carbon paper that I had used, and the image was not very good, so I had to redraw the image, go over it once I had it on the wood. The graphite is not that at all, and I never had that trouble of the material actually transferring to the. And if it does, you can always just erase it off. Yeah, Mike.
I just wanted to make a comment, Jim. For those of you who don't know me, which is always impossible since I'm such a big mouth, my name is Mike DiMaggio. I'm the vice president of the guild. Several months ago, Jim had contacted me because he knew we were involved in the Shaker Village project, and that I was looking for some kind of a sign. And Jim graciously volunteered to make a sign, which is nothing short of magnificent. How many hours did you spend on the sign, Jim?
I stopped counting at 1,600, so. No, wait a minute, 160, not 1,600.
So that's a clear indication not only of the quality of Jim's work, but of the generosity that's involved in our guild, which what I think makes us such an amazing group. And I want to thank Jim, and obviously the people in the competition thought the same, because Jim was the grand prize winner of his category for his year. I also want to welcome new member Lynn here to our group. Very happy to have you. Please feel free to reach out to any and all of us for any questions or anything. And I want to thank you so much again, Jim, for your amazing carving and for volunteering to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Yes.
I'm not a carver to speak of, but always interested in this. I know you tend to use a lot of woods when you, like basswood, softer woods when you're doing a lot of carving projects. Are you limited to the softer woods in making these types of signs, or can you do it out of anything, basically?
No, you're not limited. It's just a matter of the sharpness of the tool you're using is the primary factor in wood. But I've done a lot of cherry. Cherry is one of my favorite woods for making signs for interior use. I've done a couple of signs in white oak, which if you've ever worked in that, that's a pain. The wood is immaterial. Outside, I've used, like this is Alaskan yellow cedar, although it's not going outside, but the sign that's meant for that sort of environment is you have to be careful what one you choose. I made a mirror for one of my kids, and I planned to do oak leaf all the way around it. And it was this curly maple, no, yeah, it was curly maple. I got about 8 inches in one corner and maybe 10 inches coming down. And I said, that's it, I'm done. So the oak leaves only exist on that part. It was every quarter of an inch, it seemed the grain changed direction. Man, that was almost as hard. I did another, well, this is not lettering, but I had a friend of mine, Stephen Fry, who's a turner. He told me, he says, I'll turn 2 bowls, I'll give them to you, and you do Celtic designs on the 2, and then you keep one bowl, and I'll keep one bowl. And I did that, but I remember when you're working in a circle like that, you get to the end grain, trying to draw, and oh man, that took forever. But as far as the tools that I use these palm tools. I really, they give me a lot of control, and it's they're very sharp. So that's what I use. I do have other more traditional gouges and tools, but those are I use, and finally I use edge tools. So yeah, Mike.
Can you speak a little bit about your sharpening technique and the types of things that you use to sharpen types of stones?
Yeah, it's kind of primitive in my case. I do like paper, sandpaper, or industrial dry wet paper.
What grit do you go up to, Jim?
Huh?
What grit do you go up to?
Anywhere from 600 to 2,000, and I find that really does a nice job, and it's pretty much. I don't have a Tormek or one of those things. I do have German made. It's got 4 wheels. 2 are for curved blades, and 2 are for flat. And it's for final buffing. And I hardly ever use that. I don't know why, but.
Now, when you do final honing, do you use any kind of a fluid with that? Or
No.
just hone dry?
Right. No, I wet the paper. I do wet the paper.
Oil, water?
Water. Yeah.
You just glue that so down onto a piece of plywood
Or glass. I use, yeah. So that works.
Generally, with wet dry paper, good quality, if you wet the back of it, the suction from the liquid will let it adhere without any kind of adhesive.
And then I use a leather strop at the end to finish off this, and I have another leather block that I use. I also have ceramic stone, which is, I think, pretty good. You know, yeah. I don't use. I've never used Japanese water stones, and I have a couple of other Arkansas, but I basically tend to use.
They're not good for carving because they dish. They're too soft.
Yeah.
You're using the right stone. The ceramic doesn't, as you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't dish at all.
Right.
It stays very flat.
Yeah.
So that's perfect.
Jim, I had a question.
Yeah.
Back to layout. When you apply the pattern to the stock,
Right.
you've got a lot of straight lines. Do you use a straight edge to lay to get your line straight?
I do. Yeah, I would recommend using the straight edge to do that. And I'm not going to explain how you do a raised letter because it's pretty obvious. You just basically, once you get the image on the wood, it's basically a matter of carving out the background. What I usually do is I use a router, maybe a 1/4 inch blade, and I want to get as much of the background dealt with the router, so I'm getting to a uniform level, and then after that I carve out with one of these. So I carve out the background so you get the effective. Yeah. The first thing you want to do is draw with a pencil the center line of all of these, each one of these letters. So that represents the deepest cut in the incised letter, okay? So you're trying to carve out everything else that's not in there, but that's your point of reckoning here, you're trying to achieve. And another thing is sort of rule of carving in general, you want to carve with the grain, or as I like to think about it, carving downhill. So let's see, if I'm carving this first on the 7, the grain is this way, and I'm going to carve out using to this line. I'm going to go in this direction. To get the other side, I'm going to turn the thing around and carve the other direction. Is that clear? You can, if your tools are really sharp, you can get away with carving against the grain sometimes, but it's not a good idea. And depending on the wood. Yeah, Mike.
You ever tried using a router plane to hog out the field?
No. How would you do that?
Yeah. You put a board across the field so that it had support on both sides, and then you load the blade below the base of the router plane to the hole in the board.
Right.
And then you could actually go up and down and make the field even without using, if you wanted to do it all by hand, as opposed to using like a regular router.
You're talking about taking away the background on raised? Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I basically do that. I don't try to get it to the letter, because generally you have an indented slope. It's not straight down. Okay. You could do it that way, but let me start here. I've got the lines in the center of each letter drawn, and the next thing is to draw or cut down to that line with us. In my case, I'm using a small, pretty sharp. Now I'm going to take this tool and begin the carving into. Pardon?
Is that a V tool?
Well, no, it's not a V tool. It's a straight ledge. If you had a good V tool, which I don't think I really have, you could start by cutting that channel. I can see a little bit better. You don't want to be too aggressive, because you don't want to cut into the opposite channel of the wall of the opposite part of the letter.
Is that white oak you're carving on?
No, this is actually Alaskan white or yellow cedar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Nice. So we turn it over and carve out this, you could do a sample piece of wood and some letters, and I think you could probably get a pretty good handle on this process without.
So is that tool you're using, Jim, like a skew? Is it a small skew?
No, it's a straight across. This kind of illustrates why this process with the incise is so much faster than doing raised letter, because you can have a finished product in no time at all. If you're fast, I'm not particularly quick in doing this work, but.
Now, do you do all that standing up, bending over? Do you sit down and have it like
I do both. Depends on how with it. Yeah. Come on.
So are you going to final depth already, or is this something you're gonna kind of work your way down gradually?
I kind of, yeah, it's a matter of feel, you know, and then you can start to pull out the scrap with this way. I think the traditional method is going down vertically or at an angle on all of the cuts using Pie's method. But now at this point, you know, if you had a V tool would make a lot of sense to finish this. And the bottoms, of course, the end of the letter has to be incised down as well. So I could clean that up later. Now we're going across grain, so it doesn't really matter too much which approach.
Now, you're not worried about tear out when you come into that first cut that you made?
No, I mean I've got scored the center line, and so I'm cutting into it. You know, so it's not gonna, it shouldn't tear out. And the angle of the cut, usually 45 is what I think. One author recommended a 60-degree cut.
So the center line just tells you how far you want to go in from one side.
Right. Yeah. As you get toward the end of this, you got to be careful not to cut too deeply, because then you're going to be, you know, you have to. This is. Let me see. I think there's a lot of forgiveness in this process. You know, you can say make a small mistake, or if one of the sides is too steep and the other is not, has to be shallowed. You'd be surprised when you're all done. It's going to be not too noticeable, I think.
Jim, when you're putting on finish, do you find that there's any kind of difficulty in finishing the carved part versus the field? Because of because you kind of cut the grain and the wood to a point where it's going to absorb more than the field possibly, or that's not a
No, I haven't. I don't. You haven't had that problem, especially if it's an outdoor sign. I like to use paint, house paint. So basically, it's as long as you prime it, or if you had to prime it, and you won't have any problem like that. Let me see if I can get this. Yeah, I do have a deed tool here. Clean up the bottom of this trench.
If I could ask a question, Jim.
Yep.
You do a center line for your, to go in. Let's say if you're gonna do raised lettering, do you actually make an outline the outside of the letter?
Oh yeah, yeah. I probably should have made that.
Process?
Yeah, you basically it's going to look the same. You're going to have the outline of the letter or the number. It's just a matter of what you do. Huh?
To give you that safety margin. So
Yeah.
you straighten it out.
So,
You changed tools, did you? That around it.
yeah, this is a blue tool, and I don't think it's very sharp. So, but if that really is. Then I've used. Yeah, where do I use that? You get into the corners here and get the.
Jim, on this sign, you have the grain going from top to bottom instead of the long way. Is there a reason behind that? Maybe because a lot of the numbers are vertical, I don't know, versus having it facing the sign.
Yeah, I don't think there's any.
Doesn't matter?
Doesn't really matter. As long as the finished thing is sealed well, so that you're more likely to get some penetration in the end grain than you are. So that might be one reason to have the grain going crossways, but and also it's easier to carve with the grain. Yeah, that's probably the thing that. Let's see here.
Do you ever use a mallet at all, or is that just too heavy-handed for the work?
Yeah, I don't use a mallet, but I think using the crisp pine method, I think they do use a lot of mallet work to drive because you're coming in at an angle to the grain of the wood, so it's a bit more. I need more of that. You can see that? Can you see that? Or should I?
Jim, quick question on, you finished the seven? In your mind, is that finished? Do you have to sand? Where?
No, it's pretty much finished. Yeah, I might.
Yeah, Yeah, essentially, if your tools are sharp enough, you really don't need to.
You don't. No, you don't need to. Talk a little bit about sign hanging, and once if you're doing what I like for a sign that's going to go on the wall. What I do is I make a plywood backer board that's maybe an inch or so less in all dimensions from the sign, and then I use these keyhole hangers. I'll pass this around. So basically, you can see on the one I said the sign I set around. It has those keyholes inset into the back of the thing, and so with 2 screws or a couple, how many screws on this, it's as long as it's carefully aligned. The finish sign goes on here and then drops down, and it's not going to come. It's not going to fall apart or fall out. I've used this on exterior signs as well as interior signs, and so far.
So do you use a template to space the screws in the wall?
Well, you have to. I basically do a lot of measuring and make sure that I get them exactly where I need them. It's a matter of trial and error. I don't have a. Yeah, you could do a template. Yeah, that would make sense to do some kind of a cardboard template with the location of the screws and. Yeah,
So for gluing the 2 pieces together, do you use a Type-On 3 or you use an epoxy to?
I don't glue them together.
Oh, I thought this looked like they were glued.
No. This is once the things meet up, the keyhole fastener and the sign, and this will drop down, and it doesn't.
It's 2 pieces of wood glued together, though, isn't it?
No.
It isn't? It's just
No.
one?
No.
Width? No, okay.
I could pass this around too. And so basically,
Carefully enough.
for as far as installation, all we have to do is put the backer board, get a plumb, and 2, in this case,
Okay.
2 screws.
I guess I was thinking.
If that's the application you have for a wall, a flat wall, that's worked for me a lot. When it's a matter of a sign that's going to be outdoor, let's say it's hanging on a granite post, which I've done. I've got a good friend in Warner who's an excellent metal worker, and he's fabricated brackets and hangers for me, and that's where you end up.
Jim, whenever I look at your carvings, I notice that the inside grooves are perfectly burnished. How do you get that final burnishing? Is there a particular tool that you use to do that, or sharpen
Cleaning up the lettering.
the ones that you do?
Oh, it's a matter of the tools give the pretty much the final edge to it. Finishing these signs, if it's an interior sign, I found that a coat of shellac or 2 coats of shellac plus a good wax is all that really is needed to give you a nice finish on it. Yeah.
So that wood, Alaskan wood there, is that local or would you pick that up at?
I got that at Goose Bay.
Goose Bay, okay, and the other thing I was gonna ask you, how does that carve compare to basswood?
As far as carving, it's about the same. I think it's
Like,
pretty much the same.
seems much denser wood though.
Well, yeah, it probably is. I haven't used basswood that much, but
One grade above
yeah,
basswood.
a little
Yeah,
bit.
very nice, yes.
The wood I really like is Atlantic white cedar. If you're doing an exterior sign, Atlantic white cedar, which is a local, as opposed to the Northwest, which is the Alaskan variety. The finish is a lot whiter than this is. What the reason they call it yellow cedars because it does have that.
You ever heard of quarter-off cedar? Comes from Oregon. It's very hard to get in this part of the country.
Yeah.
We used to have a place that carried it there, but it takes these months to get it sometimes. But it's really nice. I used it like building decks and stuff.
Well, when I went to Goose Bay to get the wood for this sign, they had a small quantity, and I think that at that point the charge was $6.25 a board foot. So I said, and I didn't need all that they had, but I asked the guy, I said, well, is this price going to stay? He says, no, no. It went up to $11 and something a board foot very soon. So I bought all he had at $6. So anyway, for exterior signs, I've done signs using a clear finish, and I was using a general product called Outdoor Oil, and supposedly it penetrates, not unlike marine varnishes, which are a surface. And it seemed to work okay, but I had to go every year and recoat it. After about 6 or 7 years, this is a sign at the Jim Mitchell Community Park in Warner. And I said, you know, this is getting kind of old. So I stopped doing that. Well, it didn't take long before the modeling took those dark spots all over it, and it just was awful. So I ended up, about 2 years ago, I took it back to my shop, I cleaned up all that stuff, sanded it off, and I painted it. And it's great. I mean, it's a good house paint. It's going to last as long as, 10, 12 years. And the worst thing you do is to repaint it. And it's so I'm down on clear finishes. So don't ask me. I'm sure there are people who do it, but I think the maintenance is a killer. Yeah,
So your sign for Canterbury, this has colorization. What's
Yeah.
that type of thing?
Okay, well, this, initially we thought about having this sign outdoors, and then, no, it's going to be inside, because what I did was I used a shellac finish, and the colors come from a product called Mixol. It's a German-made concentrated coloring agent that you can add to any clear finish, and it's what the thing. So that's what I used on this, and then you can see the grain of the wood. I mean, that's really nice. And
Water-based, Jim?
shellac.
No, the colors.
The colors? I don't know.
Mixed with the shellac or oil?
Yeah, any clear finish this will color it.
Yeah, I think so.
They gotta be, if you mix with shellac, they gotta be water-based, alcohol-based.
Yeah, and I'm sure, yeah, it's probably good. And you used very little bit of it to do its, Woodcraft carries this product, and it's like you can buy them individually for about $7 a tube. This is a 10, I think this is $60 now. It was $40 when I bought it years ago. Or you could buy a 24 colors for $130.
Something decorative inside, Jim, maybe you tried like a gold leaf or something like inside turning like that side,
Yeah, you
gold leaf inside.
could do gold leaf. Oh yeah, I've got an example there coming up. One of the things I did for
Back to clear finishes for a minute. I know boat builders use a product, I think the company is Smith. They call it clear epoxy penetrating sealer. And it's a two-part. It has the viscosity of water. You need a mask. It's an epoxy. But,
Yeah.
it goes on wood without really darkening or staining. And it has, the reputation is that it's got a real water-resistant effect. So guys that are refinishing old boats can use it as a base coat. You can put it under varnish. I've used that for some outdoor things. It works really well.
Right. Is this?
Again, Mark? Smith's Clear Epoxy Penetrating Sealer.
Huh.
You have to get from marine supply place?
Yeah, I mean, places like Jamestown, down in Rhode Island. I think if you just Google Smith's Clear Sealer, it comes up. I think when I bought it direct.
Does it come in chain swap, like?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it's just one product.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not designed to be your finished coat. It's designed to make a product weather resistant. But if it was a finish coat, like on a sign like Jim was explaining, I think it would work fine.
Mhm.
Good to know, thank you.
When you go to transfer your letters onto your piece, is there a particular tool you like to trace the letters?
I use a number 5 pen, lead pencil. Here are some examples of other work that I've done. So this is a sign. I was approached by some people with the Nature Discovery Center, which was in Warner. This woman had amassed a collection of all kinds of things, nature items, and she had put this together, and they wanted a sign for the outside, which I was happy to provide for them.
So your background in this one is really fascinating, because it looks like you routed out the waste, but then you've actually gone back and carved.
Right, that's pretty much what I did here. Just
All that texture?
it is afterwards, yeah. Because the reason I do it that way is that you get a uniform depth of the background. Doing hand tooling it gives it a little more interest. And this is a local restaurant. It's they asked me to make a sign. This is really thick. It's both sides, two-sided. The way I chose to hang it, I've actually put a rod. I drilled a hole through all the pieces, the boards, before I glued them up. So I had a steel rod going through them and two sides of it, just to make sure that it didn't warp as much as I could, and to keep it together and to give it structurally solid and ability to hang there without coming apart. And this is again a sign, and this fellow in town, Rhett Corser, made the bracket, and this was for a woman in town whose family owned a cottage on Sebago Lake, and there was quite a story with her mother. And the reason it's Ivy, called the Ivy Cottage. All right, this is a sign in Bradford. A woman started this business retailing high-end goods from around the country, around the world. Unfortunately, after a year, she's out of business, so I guess she had the wrong business model. And then this is a sign for a church in Dublin, Ohio, and it's where I use gilding, gold leaf on the lettering, which really obviously sparked. But this is cherry. This sign is cherry. So this is a couple of signs I made for the Irish Cultural Center in Canton, Massachusetts. And obviously it's Irish women and men's. Let's see here. So this was the sign I mentioned. Initially, it was a clear finish on it for probably 15 years, and I had given up trying to make it look reasonable, and so I took it home and repainted it. So.
Where are you finding the paints for the outdoor paints? Because I find if you get them in the small containers, you can maybe find 3 or 4 colors. And I can't find them. Can you mix those colors to make a different shade if you wanted to?
I suppose you could, yeah.
With outdoor paints, say you wanted a lighter green, mixing a white and a green together or something like that?
Yeah, or, go to if you can't find the right color, they can mix almost anything. I can't imagine you can't get now you have to buy it a quart as a minimum, and it's like $30, it's not cheap for sure.
Like what kind of wood would you use for a sign that size and outside?
This was white oak.
That's white oak?
Yeah, which is a species that grows in wet environments, so it's really a good wood for outdoor use.
Is that toughest to carve, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's probably the hardest wood you try to work with.
I do have a question about that too.
Yeah.
Is something on any of these that you spend a lot of time on, not so much the tree sketch, because that would matter as
I
much,
may be able to.
but
pull
you
that
must
together.
run into a situation like you break off part of the M or something, do you have to go back? How do you go back and
Oh, yeah.
fix any errors?
Well, first of all, you don't want to do that, but
Well, yeah,
if it happens, I mean, I've had luck. You can find the piece that you've chipped out,
yeah,
and gluing it back in is the best way to go. Trying to putty it or anything else, it's not going to work. So that's and I've had that happen. Yeah, it happens. That's the way it goes. Usually the piece that breaks is tiny, very small, but. So this was, I don't know if you can see the whole thing, but this is just a sign for my son-in-law, who's a fan of Manchester United Football Club in Britain, and he has a basement. It's named after Sir Alec Ferguson, who was the longtime coach of that Brady's Basement Pub. So this is an incised sign I did for a friend. They have a camp, more or less, in the Mink Hills, and it was the site of one of the 20 or so schoolhouses in Warner at one time. So she wanted to memorialize that.
You notice on your excised letters especially, they're angled slightly out. They've got the flat and they're angled slightly out. Do you draw a line? Do you draw that in pencil first, so you just go a certain distance, so it's not like wider on one letter than it is the other?
No.
Do you measure that out, or just by eye?
It's just by eye. So this was another inside job I did for a friend whose his brother received this plaque, or a plaque. It's actually a clock from the Madison Fire Department, and they were helping him move, and they dropped the clock and then broke all the saw. They wanted me to make another plaque for his brother. And one deciding element between incised and raised is whether or not there are other elements as part of the sign, like the two logos that we have here. So it's not just lettering, it's other things. If I used incised lettering for the center, I'd have to have it as its own field, and then so it's kind of a decision you have to come to. In this case, I made the field for the the cap and the other things as its own standalone piece, and then I was able to use incised lettering. And this is a sign. This is all incised. Even the tree is all cut into the field, and it's for the Main Street Warner Lodge, which is newly renovated building in Warner that's going to be available for indoor entertainment. And then
You paint that, I mean, you probably don't have this problem, but I do. I would go outside the lines and it would look like shit.
yeah.
If I sanded that, would that mess it up, like to get the paint off, or have you ever had to do that?
Well, no, I mean, you can use. I might have scraped off the black paint that got out into the field, and you can get rid of that. You could sand it before you painted the white. Yeah. Yeah.
So you painted the inset letters before you painted the white field, in this case?
Yeah. I say that, and I may have done the white first and then the black, but
Doesn't matter.
whatever, I was approached by the committee that's working on the 250th anniversary of the town's founding in 1774. And we have two covered bridges in town, and the committee wanted signs made for those. They've never had been identified, so they asked me to do that, and I ended up with the Dalton Bridge and the Waterloo Bridge. That's part of the history of the town. So one of the things that's really gratifying to me is having my work sort of on display around the town.
And
I had just one question about the excise signs again, like the one behind you. And the way you hog out a lot with the router bit. So I'm just visualizing, what do? You must make a wooden frame around the whole thing. Then you have a large base on the router, or you have some rails that go across to rest the
Yeah.
router on.
Nothing.
You can't do it freehand.
Yeah, you could do that. It's kind of freehand. Careful not to eliminate enough of the background so that I have nothing for the router to sit on. So I might leave some channels so that the base of the router is always resting on the original surface of the wood. Usually like a quarter of an inch or less, what I do.
And Jim, I can't see from here, but on your Guild of New Hampshire Shaker Village one, the brown frame, is that the same piece of wood, or did you make a separate frame around?
No, it's all the same, the original piece of wood, yeah. If you want me to continue carving, I mean, it's kind of like watching grass grow, you know? Oh, yeah.
Do the 9.
The 9, okay, do the 9. So I've got the line drawn in the center of the 9. Now I've got to cut into that with this carefully, so
Give me some good touch-up photos, my friend.
Fellow made 2 of these, Jim McLaughlin. He said this was, he was living in Sunapee, this is someone who was talking about this.
Cut through the middle first.
yeah.
And then cut the outline.
No, well, that's the second part.
You cut the outline too for the.
Bert's not in the way?
I'm gonna.
Jim, I love that knife too, I have one of those. No, I take it back, mine has a little hook on the wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those two.
Great.
Yeah. All right. So I've got the center line. Let's see how it goes. Deepen it a little bit more.
You don't try to, that should have center line.
No, not at the first. I mean, you could try to, and if you wanted to do this in one pass, it might. But the wood is fairly hard, so I don't want to. If I put too much pressure, I'm in danger of going and making a mistake. So there we go. So now the wood's going away from me here. I'm going to start.
You're going against the grain.
Yes.
They tend to always push away from it and pull towards it.
Right. It's,
What I do on that cut is I just close my eyes. Hope I get it.
Has that worked?
it's an interesting theory. I don't know.
I don't see when I make an error.
On the things you got.
And hope you have some Band-Aids on.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
Big box downstairs.
I know.
And my Kevlar glove. I wear 2 of them on each hand.
Those are great.
They sure are.
So there's,
Yeah, I've already put my walk. It's in the area. I'll come over with the wood. I couldn't pick it up because it was wet. I tried picking up one. I said that's not happening. But I have a lot.
I'm not trying to go all the way down at this first pass.
What's that, cherry?
Give it.
I have a huge cherry tree. 30 minutes.
Is that wet?
Yeah, it's wet. I want to. Is your resting sore away?
You find, I mean,
So, you can,
Mike was being scored.
What?
doing the job. Let me see.
You seem to be working with or against or whatever the grain. Doesn't matter, you want to stay on your line.
No, I'm going with the grain, so the grains, and when I'm cutting into this end of it, yeah, I'm going with the grain.
So you keep moving the pieces.
Yeah.
Sort of doing that on the other side. Yes. Was a big group. Some are very sharp, but you
Yeah. Yeah. I usually don't have an audience. I never have an audience.
Sorry, I've been reading for months.
We're really not here.
We're not here.
We're really not here.
I'm trying to replicate it.
And I'm sure it would take a lot longer. I know you're probably trying to get it done in time.
I stood next to a lot of meat for 2.5 hours one day watching him turn. And I went right home. And I finally, for the first time after years of doing it, I finally was able to get on this.
So Jim, people were asking about, gee, not using a stop cut. Your center line that you're carving first with a knife is sort of your stop cut, because then you're bringing everything into that
Right.
point. So
Yeah.
that's your stop cut.
Right.
But it ends up not being a V at the bottom, is that correct?
Oh, it should be. Yeah.
It's a V
Yeah.
at the bottom, V at the bottom.
Yeah. If you look at.
So you get your straight line in the bottom, then
Oh,
you bring it
okay, I
down.
thought, that is a V, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
First blush, I thought it was round.
You could do it there. Some people do it that way, huh?
You gotta be right here.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the idea. Whether it comes out that way or not is another question. Doing a curve cut, I found it easier to use this kind of a tool, which is curved, but it's pretty flat curve.
Okay.
And so I can use either side of it to cut it, to make it flat.
I didn't realize it was necessary.
Because everything, when they found out how good he was, people just started clamoring for his services.
Now, Lori, you took the course with Dan, right?
Right.
How does his technique differ? Because I know he uses his,
He uses chisel. He
but
uses more.
but doesn't he use like the palm of his hand more as a fulcrum?
He
a
does,
lot?
and he uses a lot more tools too. He uses, because he does straps and stuff like that in the
Right.
corners. And that's the thing I think with the letter carving, is there's so many different styles you can use. And everybody finds what works for
Styles
them.
like working, you mean?
Yes, right. And it's find what works for you and perfect it.
Oh, sorry, Barry.
Oh, around the same area.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
I want to thank everybody for coming, and I especially want to thank Jim McLaughlin. Thank you very much, and thank you for Gary for hosting us at his shop, and for his wife for making the delicious blueberry muffins and chocolate.
I'm gonna take some of